Okay, so I had Tourette syndrome, and I was able to put the little ribbon of Tourette syndrome and put all the words associated with Tourette syndrome inside the ribbon and make it look really cool. And then up here on our left-hand side, we have Brad Cohen. So the topics that we're going to discuss today are what is Tourette syndrome, the IDEA definition, ADA about Tourette syndrome as well, diagnostic criteria, development characteristics, classroom support, lessons to take away, Brad Cohen, and resources. So first up, we are going to talk about what is Tourette syndrome. And Tourette syndrome is a type of tic disorder. Tics are involuntary and repetitive movements and vocalizations. They are primary symptoms of a group of childhood onset neurological conditions known collectively as tic disorder. So either it can be persistent, which is chronic, motor or vocal tics, and a provisional tic disorder. Here, like I said before, it could be vocal or motor. And the picture at the bottom is the first picture of the little boy is the motor tics. Then they can also clench their jaw often, which is what you see, and then the vocal tics. And then there's a picture of the brain and what Tourette syndrome actually affects. There is no cure for this. The vocal tics could be like wah, wah, jaw, jaw, or and then the motor tics can be head jerking, eye blinking, things of that nature. About 1 of every 162 children have Tourette's in the United States, the CDC reports. 1 of every 360 children, 6 through 17 years of age, are diagnosed with Tourette's based upon a parent's report. And that's also reported by CDC, and the CDC also reports that about half of the children with Tourette syndrome are undiagnosed. The CDC also wants to point out that anyone in any racial or ethnic group can be affected by Tourette syndrome, but that boys are actually more affected by Tourette syndrome 3 times than girls are. So the IDEA classifies Tourette syndrome under other health impairment. It comes along with a bunch of other impairments like attention deficit disorder, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, diabetes, epilepsy, a heart condition, hemophilia, lead poisoning, leukemia, nephritis, neuromic fever, sickle cell anemia, and Tourette syndrome. So all of these affect a child's educational performance, and then it is handled by the IDEA under other health impairment. So Americans with Disability Act is called ADA, and the ADA is Americans with Disability Act that was passed by Congress, signed by George Bush Sr. in 1990, which is on your left-hand side, him actually signing it. It was a landmark of civil rights extended to all people with disability. They have the right to access to public places, businesses, and participate in the same everyday activities as any other citizen. So where the ADA covers them is in transportation, leisure, going to work, or being at work, shopping, and public services. Sometimes people do have problems being protected by this, but they do tell you to say that you will bring the law if need be, and typically they does not go further than saying that you're going to bring the law into it. So the diagnostic criteria, as I have listed, are the 4 main diagnostic criteria given by DSM-5 book. However, I wanted to also touch upon 3 other ways that the DSM-5 talks about the risk and prognostic factors as well as culture-related diagnostic issues. So the first one is temperamental. I do not have this on the screen, so listen carefully to when I and separating them out. So the first one, like I said, is temperamental. Tics are worsened by anxiety, excitement, and exhaustion, and are better during calm and focused activities. Individuals may have fewer tics when engaged in schoolwork or tasks at work and relaxing at home, uh, after school, or in the evening. Stressful and exciting events like taking a test or engaging in exciting activities often make tics worse. Then the second one is environmental. Observing a gesture or sound in another person may result in an individual with tic disorder making similar gesture or sound, which may incorrectly be perceived to others as purposeful, but it is not. This can be a particular problem when when the individual is interacting with authority figures like teachers, supervisors, and even police. The third one is a genetic and uh, psychological. Genetic and environmental factors influence a tic symptom, expression, and severity. Important risk alleles for Tourette's disorder and are rare genetic variants in families with tic disorder have been identified. So, obstetrical complications, older parental age, lower birth weight, and maternal smoking during pregnancy are associated with worse tic severity. However, doctors nor scientists do know the actual cause or root of Tourette syndrome. As I mentioned in that one, it is a genetic disorder. It comes in all different forms and shapes. Tourette's is just one of them. So the general facts, and I have it in quotation marks because there are no really general facts about Tourette syndrome, that they come from somewhere. And for me, all of these 10 do come from the four sources up there. However, I do want to mention that front of the class is my personal narrative. However, it is not what I used. It was just in the back of the book. For the general facts, where he was actually speaking to you and it wasn't part of his story. So the first one is a disorder that affects a person typically their whole life, and they start to show it in their childhood years. Like I said, it's a genetic disorder. Tics are uncontrollable, even if people perceive them as not controllable or as controllable. Tics do worsen under stress and anxiety, as mentioned earlier. No one knows the exact cause. There is no cure. You can only manage Tourette syndrome. However, most people are not looking for cures. They only want to manage it and want to be accepted. And tics actually can come in either vocal, just motor, but it also can come in both forms. And a person who has a tic does not like this. Refers more to the ones who have vocal tics. They don't like hearing the tic. They don't like doing the tics as much as you don't like hearing them. So the developmental characteristics, I broke them all down because it was going to be too much on one side, and I just wanted to get a big picture of them. So as you can see, the two pictures that I have, the bottom one is showing the quotes on your left-hand side. So it shows how the child does have peers around him, but he has difficulty initiating with them. But even if he does initiate with them, he'll have difficulties taking turns or playing a game with them. He'll also, or she, anyone, I just am using he, because it is a little boy in the picture. They have difficulty with impulse control for social situations and such as running away in public or grabbing items off of a shelf of a store. And then for the top picture, kind of refers back to the three on your right. However, the one right directly underneath it is may appear to play rough with peers. They have the both type of reaction of either they just won't play with their peers or they'll run away and stare at a wall with their back to you. They have difficulties maintaining eye contact and use of appropriate body language when engaging in conversations. They feel that you are just focusing on their tics, and so they will shut down socially. They also have difficulty with conflict management and inflexibility to compromise. they don't do well in conflict situations, and they do not do well with either compromising things. They want it kind of the way that they want it. And then a cognitive part of the developmental characteristics. I have combined 3 sources for this. I felt that all these parts made a whole picture. And the picture on this is showing how a person starts with a problem or a question or whatever the case may be. They are thinking about it, then they figure it out, and then they have their answer finally. For a child with Tourette's, they have deficits with their cognitive flexibility. So the cognitive flexibility affects a child's ability to think about multiple things at one time and then simplify it to the thoughts based upon what they're expected or what their expectations are, or the demands that they make or demands made of them. And that was Simon's article, and that's what it's all about, of showing how the cognitive flexibility really is a deficit for a child with Tourette's. Then Tourette's Association of America says that they're driven to complete a current task or stay in the current environment and not move on. So this also gets worse when a child also has Tourette's and anxiety caused by obsessive compulsive behaviors. So transitions can even be even worse then. They will stick their ground and finish what they're doing. For the CDC, many people with Tourette's have problems with writing, organizing, and paying attention. So people with Tourette's might have problems processing what they're hearing and they're seeing and keep it all in and understand it and let it settle in their brain because at one end they have their tics, and the other end they're trying to listen and take notes all at the same time and digest all the information that they're receiving. So that is a deficit for them. So then for behavior and emotion, I felt that I needed to combine both of these because a lot of behaviors do flow into their emotion and how they feel about it. So for the behavior side, the attention deficit or hyperactivity disorder, attention deficit disorder or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, anxiety or depression for both emotional and behavior issues or deficits, optional defiant disorder, or conduct disorder, which is CD or ODD for option. Obsessive compulsive behavior, rage, and then for Tourette's Association of America, there are other types of behavioral development that was not touched upon for the CDC, except for rage. Rage was important to add for both because they defined it differently. And then at the bottom for real kids, they said in their Emmy-winning actually movie of I Have Tourette's, but Tourette's does not have me, say that they feel terrible. They just want to be accepted. They want to be seen as normal. They feel evil and they're frustrated and cannot stop. They feel funny on the inside and they realize they will never be able to stop the tics. So that is their emotional aspect of having Tourette syndrome. Going back to the CDC about anxiety and depression for both emotional, because for the anxiety, they'll have separation anxiety and they'll feel worried when they're apart from their parent. And behavior, they will just act out. For depression, they have changes in eating habits, weight gain or loss, changes in sleeping habits, changes in activity level, less energy, feelings of worthlessness or guilt, difficulty thinking, concentrating, and making decisions, repeated thoughts of death or thoughts or plans about suicide or a suicide attempt. This can be treated with medication or therapy. For the emotional side, a child might experience low self-esteem, especially due to the fact that they make tics and are seen as annoyance and hinder on other people's peace is what they're seen as. However, they are not. They are just human beings. The Glassano Children's Hospital said that the whole family should seek professional help do for emotional impact, because Tourette's does not only just affect a student or a child, it affects the whole family. And then, like I said, most children who are diagnosed with Tourette syndrome also have another mental health, behavioral, or developmental condition. And then for rage, going back to rage, the Tourette's Association defines it as a small percentage of children have outbursts, uncontrollable anger. They could be either physical or vocal. And then the CDC says that some people have anger that is out of control. And again, also both physical and vocal, but that no one should be blamed for their outbursts, that it is just part of who they are. The Disinhibition in Tourette Association of America is difficulty consistently inhibiting thoughts or actions, inappropriate statements, because they're unable to take mental breaks. So they'll be excessively silly, sassy, emotional outbursts, contextual swearing, blurting out, and inappropriate comments, explosive anger, and oppositional, defiance. Okay, so then physical characteristics are simple tics and complex tics. I felt that it was important for both because they are different. The ones that are different are on the Tourette Association of America. There's grimacing, which is like a glare. And then there's arm and head jerks on also, again, Tourette's Association, which are both at the same time. And then for the complex tic side, the difference is the throwing, clapping, and kissing, pinching, tearing paper or books, and holding funny expressions, sticking tongue out. And even though that clapping and even throwing things do make noise, it is part of the physical aspect of Tourette syndrome. Just note that the 3 Tourette syndrome that you see on the simple motor tics on Tourette's Association of America are just there because I needed to put them in there to finish up the complex motor tics. Okay, so then the supports given for a child with Tourette syndrome, they require breaks from a classroom, especially when their anxiety or stress level is high, because as I said before, their tics get worse in those situations. Preferred seating, different testing location, give them a copy of your notes, allowing them to type their notes or assignments, extra time on tests, and even assignments. You should always consider accommodations that are needed for handwriting issues, because typically a child with Tourette's really struggles with writing. And then for also behavioral therapies to keep their behavior and give them therapy to manage their tics outside the classroom and even inside your own classroom. The emotional support or social support that you can give them, without a doubt, the most important 2 are at the bottom, which is person first and have a good relationship with the parents and open communication. Both are very important, as the child never wants to be seen as their disorder first. They always want to be seen as, oh, hi, I'm Michael, and I am a funny kid. And oh, by the way, I also have Tourette's. And then a good relationship with their parent, having that open communication can help you better support their student, your student and their child inside the classroom and what they really, really need. Be creative with your interventions. Never rely on consequences for them. Teach them their lifelong strategies, providing supports, accommodations, modifications, anything that you can really do other than consequences. Of course, use consequences when necessary, but try to avoid them. Try to avoid their tics as much as you can. Just recognize that their tics are involuntary and that you're just going to accept it, that they're going to be worse at times and not as worse at other times. Do the best that you can to reduce the stress and anxiety in the classroom, because that will help them greatly be able to focus as well as others in the class. Okay, so then assistive technology for their students. I have a few on the screen from a Tourette's Association of America and Illinois Library. So the first top two are voice recorders. The one on the left is a little easier, it's sleeker and able to be hidden easier. It is actually a Sony ICD UX53 series voice recorder. And the other one is a TASCAM DR50X portable digital recorder. They do just about the same thing. They do record voices. Just the really cool thing about the one on the right-hand side is that you can play it back at a slower pace and it does not change the pitch and it just slows down the voice. The bottom the one in the middle rather is a pen. It actually, you can scan it on a book or text and turn a text into speech instead of speech into text. And then for Kurzweil and Dragon, both are software that you can do text to speech. Just the cool thing about each of them separately is that Kurzweil specifically is word recognition and comprehension, which is helpful for students with Tourette syndrome as they can learn more through hearing it. And then Dragon Naturally Speaking is just helps them improve on their oral skills and more advanced writing skills. But the also cool thing about that is that they can email or post to social media and dictate homework and much more. So not only is it educational, they can also connect with others outside of their realm. And then for the bottom two is audiobooks. There's no specific one. Just any audiobook is good for them because they struggle with reading as their tics are very prevalent during those moments. And then actually Microsoft Word is important to be added in here because they actually do have a text to or speech to text rather, so that they can speak their essay and they will write it for them. And then here's a little short video. We will not be watching the whole thing. We'll just watch a few moments of it.
When I tell people I have Tourette's, they always say, "What's it like?" And that's really difficult for me to answer because I've always lived with tics and my weird behaviour. I don't really know anything different. I don't really have a problem with having Tourette's. It's other people that do. In the past, other kids have called me names like spaz or weirdo. Even adults have sometimes said to me, "What's wrong with you?" And that makes me think that maybe there is actually something wrong with me. Before my parents and I knew that there was a name for the funny things I do, like always having to do things really fast or having to touch things, Mum and Dad nicknamed me Princess Clumsy. That's because I don't just have Tourette's, I have ADHD, OCD and anxiety. Most of us with Tourette's do. Sitting still and concentrating in class aren't things that I'm good at, but cartwheeling and catching things when they're dropping are things that I do really well. I used to cartwheel everywhere. It was just one of my many tics when I was 7. They aren't, oh shoot. I never mean to do the things I do, like flicking light switches on and off or blowing raspberries in people's faces. My brain just needs me to do that. The need to have a tic is a bit like when you're trying your hardest to hold your breath. You can do it for a little while, but then your brain takes over. It tells you that you have to take a breath. You might not want to, but you have to. And usually when you do let go, you take a gulping breath of air that makes you feel a lot better. So it's just easier to breathe all the time. And it's the same with tics. Probably the one thing I dislike most about having Tourette's is that I have to take medication every morning and every night. I take 2 kinds, clonidine and risperidone. They aren't designed specifically for Tourette's, but some of their side effects can sometimes slow my tics down. The exact cause of Tourette's isn't known yet. That's why there isn't a proper medication or a cure for it. And I don't like people staring at me either, but that's their problem. I have Tourette's. Get over it.
So I just thought it was important to hear a little girl speak about it and how she has overcome having Tourette's, and that she has that mindset of, I have Tourette's, just get over it. Okay, and then this is just the connection to my personal narrative, which actually is Front of the Class by Brad Cohen. So who is Brad? He's an author, educator, motivational speaker. Oh, and by the way, he also has Tourette's. His accomplishments is that after 24 interviews, he was turned away because they felt that Brad could not teach because he had Tourette's. And the 25th interview, he finally landed his dream job as a second grade teacher. He won first year Teacher of the Year award, which is the Sally Mae Award. He wrote a book. He inspired many people and still does. Countless interviews, even one with Oprah, which is actually the picture at the top right-hand corner. And now he's actually an administrator in teaching his teachers in his school district. So he's moved out of the classroom and teaching our future teachers to teach our future youth. So how it relates is that Brad does have Tourette's. He lived with it at the very beginning of discovery of Tourette's, that he did experience a lot of criticism for his takes, and that a lot of people did not believe in him, that one, he wouldn't make it anywhere, and two, that his tics were voluntary, but it was not. He showed that Tourette's you have no boundaries with. You can do absolutely anything. But Tourette's is just a part of who you are. And then Tourette's is a neurological disorder, which he advocates for at all times. And then just to finish up, the last 5 lessons that I would want you to take away from this whole presentation is that 1, advocate, advocate, advocate. Education eliminates ignorance, as said by Brad Cohen, and even through research. And then a positive, my favorite quote by him, a positive outlook breeds success, just as a negative outlook breeds failure. So it shows that those around a child with Tourette's needs to be positive and stop focusing on the negative. Focus on what they can do and not what they can't do. Lesson number 3, do not ever set limits. Make the child with Tourette's live a life limitless. Let them set their own limits if they need to or want to. Lesson number 4, accept, love, understand, and support. The best 4 things that you can do with a child with Tourette's, because they just want to be accepted, loved, understood, and supported. That is all that they want. And lesson number 5 is that to tell your story, you never know who needs to hear it. And that is what Brad learned, that he wrote it to inspire others, but he also learned that it inspired so many. So those are the 5 takeaways.